Hi, yeah, it's Jackie here from the LGFA, and we are on another Zoom call today, the LGFA show, part of a mini series focusing on coaching. And in our last episode, our first episode of this mini series, we looked at the psychosocial element of coaching, and today we're going to get a little bit technical and tactical. So there you go. I hope I teed that up okay. Joined by William Harmon, National Development Officer with the LGFA with remit for coach education. The great Diana Hora, former Mayo star and current Roscommon manager, is also here. And Glenn Kelly, a student in TUD, Technological University of Dublin, doing some fantastic research into the characteristics of performance in the LGFA. We were in touch with Glenn late last year and he's come up with some cracking stuff. All that okay, William, as a starting point?
I think that's a great introduction. So I'm looking forward to this show today, Jackie, as well, as I did the last show with Aisling and Brona regarding the psychosocial. So really looking forward to having a chat with Glenn and Diane around their thoughts around the technical aspects and the tactical aspects of the game. So I'm looking forward to the chat today on that one.
Okay, I think that we're going to start with you, Glenn, because you would have requested some footage to look at. Yes. Around some of our activity last year, particularly inter-county specifically. Glenn, what did you find out, or what key trends emerged from the information that we would have sent your way?
Yeah, so first, just give you a bit of an insight into what we're actually doing here.
Please do, yeah.
So we're investigating the game demands and what it takes to win with ladies Gaelic football. So on paper, that's a mouthful. Jesus, a game demands could be physiological, it could be psychological. There's game demands mean a lot of things in different areas. So what we want to look at is, like, for example, how many kickouts are in the game? How many times do we have the ball? When we have the ball, what are we doing with it? How many times are we getting the ball and shooting? How many times are we turning our possessions into attack? It gives us an understanding of when we go out on that field on Tuesday evening or Saturday morning, what do we need to do? And what does this game demand of us? So what we found is we have had a small sample size. So far we've done the 2020 championship, which was 15 games. So we have 30 performances, 15 winning and 15 losing. So what we found is, obviously, winners score more, believe that or not. Now, you don't need research
no
to
way.
do that. But there are a few things there that are highlighting to us. And obviously, it's a small sample size, as I said. So we're going to collect more data to really find out if there's a significant difference. But we're finding that winners are having more possessions. They're turning them possessions into attacks more. So when they have the ball, they're attacking more than the losers. They're shooting more. When they're shooting, they have a higher shot efficiency. So their shots are more efficient. They're turning them into scores. Winners are being turned over less. So if you're losing, you're getting turned over more, which you don't like. We didn't need this research to tell us that. We kind of, that
Sure.
tacit knowledge is out there. I'm sure every coach in this country knows that information. But what this research hopes to do is kind of to reinforce that we have an understanding. This has been researched. This has been down on pen and paper now. We know this is a fact. And can we build upon this? So what it takes to win is very, very important. I'm sure if we can send our players out there on the pitch having an understanding of, okay, we need 25 shots today. At least we have a benchmark. We have a target. We're going out there with an understanding of something that we have to work towards. So yeah, I'm sure we'll flesh it out. There's pages and pages of research.
No, it all makes perfect sense. Glenn, I'm sure Diana, as a manager now, that's music to your ears. A lot of what Glenn is talking about there. It seems to me from what he's saying is that winning teams are economical teams. Diane, they do what's required in possession. They don't kick, they kick in the correct positions. They work the ball to a better placed teammate. Does all of that kind of stuff stack up, Diane?
Yeah, I suppose it's how you interpret them as well. We'll have talked about it on the Learn to Lead course, with Will and Liam Moggan and, the team that I was on the course with. And we'd have kind of talked about it's what you do with it. So you can have all of these positions, you can have all of these shots, but if you're hitting, 80-90% wide, well, then there's a bit of a concern. So it's to make sure that you turn them into results, that you're using the stats as your advantage. So a lot of the time you look at what you're good at and try to continue, being good and even better in those areas. And then you're looking at where you need to, improve. If you don't manage to transition the ball enough times, you don't get enough attacks, so therefore you're probably not going to get your 25 shots, for example, if that's your target. So I think the research Glenn has done, and not just because he's here, or Orna is working with him, but I think it's incredible. I think it's taken everything up like a huge step further. But then in terms of coaching, it's none of these things are going to happen unless you've coached the skills of the game. So it becomes a completely different kettle of fish. I mean, you're not going to transition the ball if players can't solo. You're going to reduce your options if they can't use both feet, if they can't use both hands. So that's where I suppose it comes to probably, the technical aspect for me, in terms of your excellence in the basic skills of the game, because without them, stats, they're probably a waste of time, and you probably won't really improve that much.
Yeah, and I heard there, Diane, I heard somewhere, I don't know where now, I'm trying to find it, but I heard that if you can kick off both sides of the body and hand pass off both sides of the body, you have 7 more options available to you as a player. And I suppose that's an important point, Diane, I suppose, is that we kind of forget that we probably have all these kind of ideas in terms of game plans and how we want to play. And we probably do we ignore the skill element of it to kind of, presume that players have this basic skills, when actually, in fact, if you want to move the ball fast into your forwards from a kick, and I know, Glenn, you've got good stats around, teams that use the kick pass into the forward line and they get overturned. But if you don't have the ability to find distance or even find the space, then no matter what kind of game plan you have, it's going to unravel because of the limited technical ability. What's your thoughts on that, Diane? Do you feel that that's a big starting point first before you start talking game plans and stuff? What is your own strengths and weaknesses as your players, and probably developing them first? What's your thoughts on that, guys?
Yeah, I completely agree. Well, I mean, what I've seen is that, a lot of coaches, they want to come in and impress the team and just be this great modern manager that's bringing all these new drills and new game-based scenarios. But it's probably just me. Maybe not everyone's the same. Obviously, I like to vary it, but the skills are so important to me. And, all the great coaches that I look to around in other counties, they're so intent on ensuring that the skill levels are up to the absolute maximum or to the best the players can be. There's an expectation also that by the time a player becomes, a junior county representative or intermediate or senior, there's an expectation that, they will have achieved the skills of the game, which is, in your player pathway that you guys have developed, we all know what they should be and what a player should be able to do at a certain age. Is that being adhered to? No, because there's a responsibility put on coaches that there's a plan that's made. If it's not broke, don't fix it. There's no point reinventing the wheel. There's a pathway there that actually says what players should be able to do to be as proficient as they can possibly be. And I still have a huge focus, in my coaching, actually on the skills of the game, because that's what makes it. People would say the game is evolving, the game is changing, there's influence from other sports, but it's going to go downhill in terms of a team that I take unless the players are working on their skills.
Diane, can I ask you a question in terms of the whole stats and having them at your disposal and having them available to you? Where do you strike the balance between overcomplicating it in the minds of players? Because, for example, there are some players who, you mentioned the idea of bringing in a sports psychologist, for example. Some are for it, some are not for it. If you overburden players with too much information in terms of stats, some of them might say, yeah, that's interesting. Some of them might tune out completely. It's just the nature of the beast, and you have so many different personalities that you're working with as well. For example, Glenn mentioned, we need to perhaps get 25 shots on at goal in this game. But you might look back at the opposition and you might say, well, they're not coughing up 25 shots at goal, so you might have to set a more realistic target. I suppose the question, Diane, is it's not as simple as just go and use these stats and put them into play for the next game. You have to take them and look at them and evaluate them to your own needs, and also bearing in mind the opposition that you're coming up against.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's not my speciality. I'm working with a guy in Roscommon called Niall Heaney, and he's fully certified. He's got all of his badges in terms of stats analysis with all the different organizations, and he will help me. I work with him. So, ultimately we've done some small mini projects ourselves in looking at different games, and the Westmeath Roscommon game, that was just the semi-final there before Christmas. So we're looking at where I'm hoping to go with the team and where there's areas that I hope that we can improve on. But Niall actually is, in terms of our communication, he breaks down what we need to know. In terms of what players need to know.
Absolutely.
Players want to know everything, absolutely everything. And I'm not really mad for that, to be quite honest. I think that, you'd find one player wants to know why it failed up the front, or, in the full forward line. Yeah, that same player again, now she's making a mess. But she might have had, she might have won 12, 13 possessions and made full use of 90% of them and hit 2 wides. But a player will only see, based on the end result, we lost the match, she hit 2 wides. If we'd scored those, we'd have won the match. So, I think players probably, I think education is good and empowerment is good and giving them plenty to look at. But do it strategically, do it bit by bit over time, so that you're not overloading players with things that they really don't need to worry about. And then I think, like, from my approach, I tend to just deal with them directly, because players like that. And then, if they're concerned about other things, at least you know that when you have that conversation with them.
But Glenn, are you working with teams yet, or in the past, or is that the goal or the plan?
Now at the moment, I'm working with a couple of clubs at the moment, and it's kind of exactly what you're saying. There's a thing that it could be paralysis by analysis. If you overanalyze things, you could do 10 good things and one good. You could do 10 good things and one bad thing, and you're going to focus on that bad thing. It really comes down to, and I was watching another series there the other day, an LGFA show, and it's really knowing your athlete. It's like some athletes thrive on, if you give them an okay, you've lost, or you came under 3 high balls, then you lost them. Okay, some athletes will thrive in that situation. However, some athletes will crumble. So it's kind of really, really knowing your athlete and when to kind of deliver the analysis. What are we going to deliver? Like, the coach is always going to be king. Like, the performance analyst in that club is always there to kind of facilitate, to assist the coach. We're not going to come in and say, okay, we attacked 10 times by a kick pass today and there was a 90% efficiency, so next week all we're going to do is kick passes. Because that's completely not how it works. It's kind of, how can we help the coach? That's like the full role of performance analysis. It's nearly the same of this research. How can we benchmark performance? Can we have an understanding of where we can get to, inform the coaches so they can kind of start having more understanding of the game, really? So
it's a fascinating field, then, because your job varies from a pre-game, in-game at half-time, where the manager is coming to you looking for maybe 2 or 3 key pointers. He doesn't want a blow-by-blow account of what happened in the first half, or he or she. And then post-game as well, you're probably tasked with different elements as well. It's absolutely fascinating. Diane, if you're in at half-time, Diane, what are you looking for from the stats team? You don't want loads. You just want a few key pointers. What kind of stuff are you looking for from them?
Well, I suppose stats are one thing, but I'll have 2 people working with me on the line. I'll have Claire Noon, Bilal Moran, and they will be probably spending a time. One will be, say, focusing on the defensive unit. The other will be focusing on the forwards unit, and then I'm going to be watching, I suppose, overall. And their role in communication with me is if something stands out, so that we can action something quicker. At halftime, usually you're looking at efficiency and results, for and against. So if we leaked goals, or if we capitalized on scoring our own, it's probably just to summarize how we're doing that. So usually there's a flag. Like, for example, an opposition team's, left half back might be really struggling with a flying wing forward. If we know that, then we can utilize that more so in the second half, before the opposition will probably, be aware of it. And if they're not, then, you move your player back over to where he's moved theirs or she's moved theirs. So, there's different options available, but I think it's for and against, where you profit one end and, where you've made a loss the other end. Yeah,
it's fascinating, Dana, because to the trained eye, and you've got an incredibly trained eye from so many years involved, you will see that if that pattern is emerging. But Glenn, is there instances or cases then where you're seeing a pattern emerging, or how long does it take for a distinct pattern to emerge that, if you're working with Diane, she might not have noticed because she's focused on maybe a different
stress,
you can be of huge benefit to your manager at a time where he or she absolutely doesn't expect it. You're seeing something that he or she might not see.
Yeah, definitely. So as Diane said, like, when you're on that line, there's the stress on that line, Jesus. You're watching so many things, there's so many decisions, there's a lot, like, needless to say, there's a lot going on. So obviously, for example, if Diane goes out and sees, okay, we're losing kickouts, Diane shouts out to me, are we losing kickouts? Yes, well, we've lost the last 3 kickouts. It's just that kind of reinforcement that it actually is happening. It's not just you're not just the subjectively seeing it, it's actually objectivized. We're counting these, we know, yes, we are losing the kickouts. However, If you keep on losing that kick out, you're going to get stressed about that kick out. The blinkers go on, you're worrying about them kick outs. However, you could have a corner forward up there running rampant, and you've got so blinkers on, you're worrying about that kick out. However, there could be someone up in the corner running rampant. Okay, so are we losing kick outs? Yeah, we're losing kick outs, but we also found a trend here. Okay, the corner forward.
Yeah, she's in there and she's got 1-4 in 10 minutes.
yeah. So like she's had the ball 7 times and she got 6 shots off. She may have scored none, but she's still getting 6 shots off. We need to do something there, and it's just kind of, again, nailing this down. The coach is always going to be king. The coach has that trained eye, and it's always just how can we help that coach.
I think that's a good point. And do you know what? And I think you've mentioned there now twice about the trained eye, and Jack, you've said as well, is, you know, you need to know what you're looking for, number one, and you need to probably practice. Sometimes on the sideline you get too caught up in the game, like you're saying there, Glenn. So is there, and I'm just going to throw a question to you, because we did a webinar with Lee Morgan recently. Is there a kind of a call for, is there a need for coaches to be on the sideline? Now, I know you have your own statisticians, stats people and stuff like that, but I know there's a lot of coaches out there that don't have. They use their own little, you know, pen and paper, and they have, you know, it reforms what they're doing, which can be done as well. Is there a need for the coach on the sideline on game day? Okay, so if you've gone through all you've done with your training, okay, and you've gone through all your game plans, and the players should know going out, is there a need? So going back to the trained eye, if a coach on the sideline, is that developing their training eye, or should they be up on the stand and observing and watching what's going on and develop that trained eye? What's your thoughts on that? Because I think that's very interesting in terms of, if you're on the ground, I don't know, can you see everything? Are you missing things? Or like that, Ken, oh geez, you're on the sideline, we've lost the last 3 kickouts. But if you're removed from the situation, would you be able to see a lot more? I don't know, what's your thoughts on that, guys?
That's very interesting that you say that, because it's something that's definitely prominent in rugby. You look at, like, for example, there's you have a little break in rugby and the cameras go straight to the stand, and it looks like the coaches and the managers are working in NASA. There's more computers than using Microsoft, and they're there. They're not even watching the game. Everything goes through a screen. And it's kind of, it's that disconnect. I'm not, like, to be honest, I'm completely on the fence, because you have so much information, but when you're kind of down there, I think Diane be better answer on that one. It's a tricky one. I'm on the fence.
Diane, we saw Davy Fitz up in his box, I think, was it last year or the year before, and he spoke after the game about how he actually had a better view up there. But you know, you probably couldn't imagine somebody like Davy Fitz not being down on the line with that fire and brimstone stuff. It's Dan, have you watched the game as a coach further up in the stands, or are you normally positioned on the touchline?
Yeah, normally positioned on the touchline. But a guy that that does video for us, Declan, he's the under-16 manager, Declan Walsh in Roscommon. He's showed me some aerial views. So, he has a number of different cameras that can give you different angles. And it is blow away the amount of extra detail you'll see versus, TG Cahir TV angle. This is like a bird's eye view, potentially. Brilliant. A drone or, a higher camera. And it's incredible the amount of detail, because, people are looking at kickouts. They're looking at the position of kickouts. Everyone's trying to create space and trying to find it and trying to use it. And it's what opposition are doing and so on and so forth. There's a lot of different benefits, huge benefits, in terms of being able to have that bird's eye view, certainly. And I know, when it comes to a time, I'm sure at some point I hope to, as we move forward, is have someone there with that bird's eye view who I trust, who understands how I am hoping that Roscommon will play, versus what may be happening on the field. And as Glenn alluded to there, and the same with Will, you're completely engrossed. Think down on the sidelines where all the passion happens by the crazy managers. But anyway, Will, you'll be proud. I've learned a little bit of keeping.
I love to try and do my own coaching, and I'm trying it. Is that whereby for the first half I'll try and go up. Because the game is settling, there's a lot going on. For the first half, I try and go up and just watch the game. And then maybe the second half, I might come down the last 20 minutes. I'm trying my best to probably develop that as a coach myself, because I feel that I can just watch how the patterns are emerging or how the game is emerging, and probably gives me a better sense of my own perspective on things. So that's just, I just wanted to throw that out there. I'd love to ask a question in your training, guys. So Diane, in your training, does what you do in training, does it equip the players for what they do on the pitch, and does it allow them to make better decisions on the pitch on game day? What's your thoughts on that?
That'd probably be something for the players, but the last couple of years I was with Clonagale Fontenoy in club, and we just went up senior. We won the intermediate and got to the Leinster semi-final. Unfortunately, we were missing a few players like that, went off to get engaged, nothing really too important. But, key players, and, we didn't progress to the final. But in saying that, they came from, we say intermediate status, won the intermediate and stayed up senior for first year in Dublin. And I think a lot of that has to do with, me learning and evolving with them. I think that something that Glenn was saying, and Jackie, you were saying it as well, is, about knowing the players. It's like putting a jigsaw together that, if you end up, completely confused on the sideline, it means you don't know what you have in your bag. Like, you don't know who to move where for what. So, it's so important. Like, communication is the biggest key. And like, I'm in a really difficult position because not just the situation every other manager is in at the moment, but we have in Roscommon 64 players putting their hand up saying, I want to come and play for Roscommon. So, let's say, for example, we get a month. I'm going to have to really work hard to try and get to know those players and discover what they're really strong at and where I fit them into the jigsaw. So, that's what I think is probably kind of going back to what you were saying. It's about the communication aspect, and it's getting to know your players. If you're watching a game from above, you see something that needs to change. Like, obviously you need to communicate that to your runner, and then that needs to go back onto the field. So, I think that's one of the key things for me.
But Diane, how much from your playing days, and you enjoyed brilliant success, how much more technical and tactical has our game become? They're obviously impossible to quantify, but descriptively, where are we at?
It's really, really moved on. Like, I know, when I suppose we won the first All-Ireland in 99, it was very much, and, Finbar was an incredible coach, and we would have learned so much from him because he was very clear in, and I still do this to this day, he was very clear in giving a player her role. So you have 2 things to do for the day. That's all. You don't need to bog yourself down and trying to do 7 or 8, because I'd love to go to a player and give them 10 things to do. But obviously I've learned that doesn't work. And, that's the manager having a bit of a freak attack rather than, whatever. So it's completely changed. Stats would have been the score, that could have been what you were looking at in terms of scores. Like Finbar then, on the other hand, was a little bit of a statistician himself, because he would tell you how many times you gave away the ball. Nearly every player, he just has it in his head. And, you knew at half time or whatever the case might be that things would have had to change second half. But we basically picked horses for courses. We picked a team to play a team. So he was very strong as well in terms of his matchups. He knew how to get the best out of the players he had, because he knew them so well and communicated with them incredibly well with us. But he also knew how to stop opposition from what they were doing, and he was incredibly quick to react. So I think that's where we did really well. We came out of nowhere all of a sudden. Waterford had beaten us by 30-something points the year before we won the All-Ireland playing against them. And that was a long bus journey home. But things changed then. And when I look at it now, coaches and managers, I wouldn't still be doing this if I wasn't learning from the likes of Glenn, the likes of Will, and I suppose learning to reflect and look at myself and what am I doing. And, I wouldn't be probably still doing it if I wasn't evolving as quickly as I'd need to keep up with the game.
And Glenn, a question for you. Obviously, there's huge benefit for statisticians, for management teams, for managers, for coaches. But how beneficial can a statistician be for a player as well in terms of their development? And Diane, I suppose further on to that, if a statistician is spotting something about a player, that's a potential weakness. Okay, you can always point out the strengths as well. That's very, very positive as well. I would presume that the statistician will go to the coach, who will then relay the message to the player, rather than the statistician going straight to the player and saying you should be doing this, because the coach's job or the manager's job is surely to relay that type of information.
Yeah. So definitely, it all goes through, like, realistically, there's no point to perform standards finding thing with a player, and then it has to go through the coach. So what are we finding? What are we finding?
So your role, sorry to interrupt you, your role is you're specifically answerable to the coach stroke manager.
Yeah, coach is king. Like, there's loads of times when I'd be working with a club, and then you could have one of the players texting you being, can you send me the the 10 clips that I lost the ball. You don't know that player. Well, you of course you do know that player. You know the culture in the club. You know the setup in the club. However, that's kind of, in my opinion, that's overstepping the boundaries. It all, like, it goes through the coach. The coach knows that player best. Some, like, for example, that player could be looking to find out them 10 balls that they lost. Why did they lose them? But again, it's paralysis by analysis. Can you feed back to the coach, and the coach feeds that back? Everything always go through the coach, and even kind of taken away from like a statistician, like numbers and everything, even technical analysis, like performance analysis. What we're doing is we're analyzing performance. So, for example, if you had 5 place balls that day, if you had 5 free kicks around the day, and you put 4 of them wide, okay, as opposed to just saying, okay, you put 4 wide. So what? What can we do here? Can we do a technical analysis at training the next day? Can we look at you kicking the ball? Can we literally get video and look at the video? Okay, you're pulling left. Okay, when you're kicking that ball, you're dragging left, you're dragging right. It's kind of, where can you find that nuggets? I'm not getting sucked in by the numbers. So, you missed 4 out of 5. But so what? Why? Always asking them questions and digging deeper.
Where's that balance then, Diane? Because Glenn talks about the player coming to the statistician saying, look, I know there's a problem here. Can you send me those clips so I can have a look? I think that's healthy in a way, that the player is understanding there's an issue here. So should the statistician then take that information and say, look, I'll get back to you on that. Then he'll go to the coach and say, look, Elaine or Mary or Johnny or whoever it is thinks there's a problem here. How do we deal with this? Is that the best way to go about that situation, Diane? And then you can all have an adult conversation and get some footage together and review it as a team, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I completely agree. People learn differently. I can explain something to someone in whatever fashion I do, and they might understand it, might filter through. Or I can, try and show them on the field of someone else doing it. But actually, the benefit of a visual video clip of what I'm actually talking about, or what we're trying to kind of help a player understand, when they get to see that, they can ask questions, and you can rewind it and go through it again. And I suppose, it's like maths almost. Eventually you get to the right answer, because they'll look at it, analyze it, and everyone looks at something differently and they see something different. So that's where the communication comes into it, that you do this with your statistician and you do it with the player. Or you have like an open forum where you can just put up these clips. So if it's something that you're trying to achieve, we'll use the term pattern of play, or you're trying to work on your kickouts and you want to show them the perfect one, or else you show them one where maybe such a player wasn't in the right place at the right time, and can we try and work a bit harder on it? The visual aspect of that is it's highly valuable.
I think though, Diane and Glenn, I suppose from a coaching perspective, sometimes you have to give a bit of information. If a player's not making a team or wherever it may be, or because of I think I've heard, I listened to a webinar recently. They were saying in terms of like coaches should practice what they say to players. So if they have to have those, okay, you're doing well in this, but you know what? You need to improve in this area. It's about practicing what you say in that communication. So how you get your message across and actually writing down what you're going to say to the player. So then when it comes across well. So I think that's a very good point you're making around communication. It's
constructive though, Will. You're not... Yeah. You're not cutting the player in half. You're saying you're good at this, but this is what you need to work on. And here we have the evidence. And there's.
I thought it was a great learning, Jackie. Actually practicing what you're saying to players. I thought that was very interesting. But I'd be interested to hear from Glenn and Diane in terms of. So, Glenn, if I would say to you, you're a coach in a training session, like what aspects should a coach start practicing in the field? Is it just all kickouts? It should be on the ball. Like, what would your advice be to coaches in terms of training? And how would you break it down?
Yeah, so it's probably music to Diane's ears and everyone's coach, but the skills. Like we can come out and we can use fancy words, patterns of play, and we can say, okay, this is our game plan. This is what we're gonna do. We're gonna go
game plan, the famous game plan.
The game plan is turning into Moneyball. We've had numbers, okay, we do this, great, let's do this. But then we figure out when we go out there that we can't win a hype because our catching isn't there, our kicking isn't there, our hand passing isn't there. You can have the best plan ever. You can have the fantastic plans, okay? But if underpinning this, facilitating this plan is your skills.
Yeah,
you can't how many times have you heard of the greats? They didn't leave the training session. They didn't leave the pitch until they turned off the lights because they were there practicing the skills. They weren't writing down plans of what they're going to do next week. They're kicking the ball. They're catching the ball. They're 1 foot from a wall. They're hand passing. It's the skills. Everything else, like players have creativity. Let's not take that out of the game. All players are going to be creative, but in order to be creative, they have to have their skills. And I'm sure Diane's nodding away there. But that's kind of It's the skills. It really, really is the skills. And how can we?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Glenn. Like what your kickouts is one aspect. Obviously, on the ball, you have a good skill base and off the ball as well. But I'd love to know your thoughts on, and Glenn, I'd love to get your feedback on how do managers go about going, I suppose, practicing a game plan? Is it on the night? Is it the day before a game? Is it should they be practiced over a period of time to get? I don't know, what's your experience of that, Diane? I'd love to hear how do coaches actually implement their game plan, or is it in the dressing room, right? We're macking Harold, you're macking Harold, or we're going an extra player back today. But what's your thoughts on that sort of element?
I think there's a couple of ways of doing it, and probably the way that I would do it mostly would be keep it a little bit broad. So you work on kickouts, you work on transition, and maybe how you'd like to see the team do things, how you want to get your scores, and from where, and from whoever's up there. So like they're the kind of three areas that I'd break it down if we're looking at attack. So from kickouts, the possession. Like Glenn would say there, like on the skill of the game, somebody went up and they weren't able to catch 3 balls in the air. But actually, going back to the stats, maybe they were able to break it down to someone in space that you had over on the left wing. And that's where you were looking for the ball to be transitioned. So, there's ways of looking at it as well and interpreting it. For me, I break it down. I'd work on kickouts, then you'd work on something else, and then something else again at a later stage. And then obviously you'd kind of have an evening again, you'd work on defensive roles, the skill of the tackle, the near hand tackle. Everyone needs to be able to be a defender at this stage, when you have attacking cornerbacks, fullbacks, and so on. So, there's sort of key elements that I would break it down and work on, I suppose, over time. It's not something.
You wouldn't do the night before. So like, a scenario whereby you could be in a dressing room and, okay, guys, the tactics for this Sunday is you're marking her, okay, and she's probably the first time she heard about it. You know what I mean? So there's a bit of method behind the madness. In other words, Diane, what I'm saying is that if you're going to do something for the game at the weekend, you've got to practice on the training pitch. In other words,
and like
you might have a few stories. Which
I've heard stories, and I've witnessed different things, and I'm sure I've made, and I certainly have made big mistakes in the past. Where I'd say, where somebody's saying, all right, what are we going to do about such and such a forward? Who's going to mark her? And, at that time I might be, I could have been focused on something else, and I'd say, no, don't worry now. I'll tell you exactly what that plan is. And what happens if you forget the plan? What happens if you forgot to do it? So, that's why I think that a lot of these kind of team talks have to be open communication. And if, as everyone has alluded to, if the skills of the game are there, if everyone's quite comfortable in how we move the ball forward, pattern of play or game plan or whatever it is, if we move forward, obviously the bottom line is we want the results. We need goals, we need points, and we need to concede a lot less, or ensure that we concede less than the opposition to win the match. That's the bottom line. So to get there, when you announce your team and give players their roles, don't leave anyone out, because, someone may get injured. There might be a yellow card. Then what happens? And it's to help empower the players to make the decisions themselves. And when you're just saying there about working on these plans and keeping it broad, just don't restrict players. Let them express themselves. Just because they don't make a decision or pass it to someone you as a coach or manager hadn't planned on, so what? So what? They're there to try and help us win the match. They're not there to make a mistake, and there's no such thing as a mistake because it's not on purpose. So I think over the years I've become a lot more forgiving as well, I have to say. So this learn to lead has ruined me.
It's made you even better, Diane. It's made you even better.
I don't, Glenn, have you thought on that?
Yeah, it was definitely something that Diane was saying. It's kind of really resonating with me. It's kind of, what type of coach are you? Is it coach led or is it player led? If you have an issue, if there's a problem, so if there's a problem on the field, and for example, we're being turned over too many times, as opposed to you going into that dressing room saying, this is what we know, this is what I'm doing, this is what we're doing, because I chose, I looked at the numbers, I seen it, I know what we're doing. However, that coach on the sideline, how about asking the players on the pitch, okay, guys, the numbers are telling us that we've been turned over too many times. What do you think? Let them, they're going to give you the answers. They're out there, they're marking that corner forward who's fast. It could be as simple as that. Like, they're on the pitch. What can they offer? What answers do they have? And how can you really nail into that? What do we know? What do the players know? And how can we kind of amalgamate the two of them together? to have everyone buying in. So as opposed to the coach coming in and say, we're going to do this. Okay, this is what we found. What did the player think? What does the coach think? And it's coming together as a team. We are a team out here. What making decisions as a team.
Is it Glenn, you know, kind of like a thing from a coach that the coach feels they need to have all the answers, which, you know what? You don't need to know all the answers. The players on the field probably have the answers for you, and probably just letting that kind of having that conversation with players. You know what? I don't know the answer here. I think it was Jackie. Was it you know, Dublin were playing Cork, and Dublin were winning 8 or 9 points. And I think the great Eamon Ryan said on the sideline at the time was, I had no other solutions. It was, and I think it was a Breach and maybe
Breach and Deirdre O'Reilly just looked at each other.
Just said, "Listen, we got to.
This
do
isn't
something
happening.
This isn't happening. We got." But I think it was the environment that was created that kind of, you know, listen. And Eamon put his hand up and said, "I don't have any other answers. You know what I mean? I've played all the subs. What else can we do?" And it was the player that took ownership. But I think it was the environment and the training environment, and allowed, as Diane and Glenn saying there, is giving players buy into the, I suppose, the problem solving. He gave them that opportunity. I don't know. That was just my thoughts on that. Yeah.
Glenn, question for you, right? And we'll wrap it up shortly, folks. I'm conscious of your time. Has there been situations, or has there been a situation whereby you're asked to do maybe a volume of work on the opposition, on a forthcoming opposition, right? So the manager might say to you, "Look, I want you to look at X, Y, Z." So, right, so you go away and look at X, Y, Z, right? But you, while you're looking at X, Y, Z, you might have missed A, B, and C. Would you prefer to have an open brief when you're analysing a forthcoming opponent, or would you rather that you've been asked to look at a few things, in the running the risk at the same time that something, a distinct pattern or something that would be very relevant might slip through the cracks? Where are you on all of that?
Yeah, so personally, my kind of workflows and my process, I kind of have a look at everything. So what does the coach want to know? You're definitely going to answer that, because again, I'm going to nail down the coach is king. But kind of, what else are we finding here? We may, like, our tacit knowledge and our understanding of the team or playing, and that player that plays, like someone who's really, really good. We know that stuff. We don't need the numbers to tell us that, but it's what else? Can we dig a little bit deeper? Can we find a nugget? Can we find that gap? And sometimes, obviously, look at X, Y, Z. You don't go off and just look at X, Y, Z. You definitely provide X, Y, and Z, but what else? Okay, so we know that this is happening, this is happening, this is happening, but because we feel this may be happening because of it, they're shooting a lot. But they seem, when they're building up, they kind of have the little stagger in the middle of the park. What's happening there, and how can we kind of, is there a gap? What can we improve on? It's always to improve performance and to inform decision making, but that doesn't come to the forefront. It's always to assist, it's to facilitate what's going to happen. So if you've done your opposition analysis 2 weeks before, and you find something, you don't go into training and that's all you do for the next 2 weeks. You use that to kind of build, and how can we use that to inform a positive behavioural change, really, as cliche as that sounds.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating stuff, and we look forward to hearing more from you, Glenn. Glenn, just final question: what's next, or what's the journey for you at the moment?
Yeah, so at the moment we have 2020. So as I said, that's 15 games, 30. So we have 15 winners, 15 losers. Is that going to wrap it up now? That's lazy football for you? No, it's most certainly not. So we want to basically collect data from 2017 all the way up to 2021. So that would be 5 years. That would allow you to answer a lot of questions. How's the game evolving? What happened in 2017 that's different now? Is the short kick out something that's happening? Is the shooting area is different? Is the attacking, is there more kick passes? There's less kick passes. It's kind of things like that. And then we want to look, like, we always have that question in mind, is so what? Why? As opposed to just saying, okay, this is happening. So what? Okay, so we're winning kickouts. But your kickout, you could be playing your kickout right inside the D. Your kickout could be going a short kickout and you're losing it after 3 steps. So, okay, your short kickout, you won your short kickout. But did you get a shot off from that? Did that kickout result in an attack? Did it result in a shot? Did it result in a score? Which is kind of, let's not deviate away from what is the objective of this game. Like we had fantastic use of possession. We just didn't score. Well, sorry, but we have to score in this game. That's kind of the purpose here. So we always keep that in mind. So what? So we kind of want to find out once we have an understanding, it's kind of building upon that, really.
Yeah, there's so much to it. I could talk all day about it, or discuss it all day. Like Diane, we've heard so many teams. Oh, we lost we lost the game there, but we had 70-30 possession, as Glenn says. Well, so what did you do with the 70%? You obviously didn't do enough with the 70% possession. Dan, we wish you well with your new role with Roscommon. I mean, obviously we're in a little bit of limbo. How are you managing to keep the players engaged and I guess optimistic and hopeful?
Yeah, well, I suppose I'm blessed to have a strength conditioning coach in. So Anne Caffrey is kind of working with them very closely. She's working on technique. Injury prevention is a key aspect. And she's trying to prepare the players. The large numbers that we have right now is trying to prepare them so that when we do get on the pitch, on the grass, that, they'll be in good shape. Whereas it's not going to kind of inflict any sort of, they're going from zero to hero nearly, over in about 3 weeks. So that's probably the key thing for me, and make sure that every single girl, out of all of those 60, that they get a fair chance, and we get to see them plenty football as soon as we kick back. So I'm kind of just waiting here by the announcements that come in day by day to see what comes out. But I think, like, ultimately, as you're saying there, we've had a sports psychology webinar with Moira Trassa. Like, we're doing things to try and keep them motivated and keep communication, the lines open. And at the moment, they're all getting involved in a 5K virtual run. So like, it's very progressive. And as you know, Michelle, now the PRO, she's on the Learn to Lead program next year. So Michelle Hughes is kind of keeping everyone aware of what's going on in Roscommon ladies at the moment. And it's like, it's never been busier.
I wish you well. Diane. We look forward to hearing more from Roscommon and your good self as the year goes on. Will's interesting chat. Enjoyed that. Fascinating stuff. You could talk for hours about this stuff.
You could, and I suppose at the end of the day, as coaches, whatever you're doing in your sessions and stuff, the objective is to get the ball over the bar or under the bar. You know what I mean? And sometimes when we're doing drills and activities, it could be the greatest drill in the world, yet the ball could be going wide 10 times. But sure, that's all right. Sure, look, the drill is going well. Do you know what I mean? So I suppose it's kind of, it just comes down to the simplistic things that, can we get more scores in our opposition? And keep it as simple as that. What are we doing our kickouts, on the ball, off the ball? Keep it very simple. And as you said there, guys, let the information then inform your thinking. But no, I really enjoyed the chat with Diane and Glenn. Glenn's doing great work with the research, and Diane is just a diamond in terms of knowledge and experience, and just looking forward to see how she gets on next year as well in terms of her coaching role as well. But I just want to say thanks again, Jack. I really enjoyed this. Yeah. And we're back again now. Our next LGFA show is our last one in this series. We'll be looking at the physical considerations, Jackie. So that's our next angle. So we're looking forward to that. So, but thanks again, Glenn, and thanks again, Diane. Really enjoyed that chat.
Thanks,
great stuff. Yeah, Glenn, you've put yourself in the shop window, I'm sure, for potential inter-county and club managers looking on here. We wish you well in your work, and do keep in touch and keep us informed of all the latest updates and happenings and developments. And Diane, we wish you well with Roscommon in 2021. There's a bit of sunshine I can see streaming in through your windows there, so hopefully the dark days are behind us, and there's a little bit of light and a little bit of football on the way as well. Wills, we'll talk to you real soon as well. Hope all the family are keeping well. And guys, that's been the LGFA show, a tactical and technical LGFA show. So delighted to have William Harmon, Diana O'Hora and Glenn Kelly. Folks, stay safe, stay well.
Thank you.